All right, and welcome to another HRAI webinar. Today, we are happy to have back Klayton Gonçalves with BuildForce Canada. He's going to be taking us through greener buildings, HVAC opportunities. Now, this is a look at the new BuildForce's latest report, Building a Greener Future, and what that means for folks in the HVAC industry. So at this point, I will invite Klayton to join us. There he is.
Thanks, Matt.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Thank you once again.
Nice to be here again.
Excellent. Before I let you get started, I just want to go through a few housekeeping items. This is an interactive presentation, so if you have questions, please make use of Klayton's time. He's here to answer them, and you can put those in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, or you can share those in chat, and I'll be watching that, and we'll ask them at the end of the presentation. Otherwise, this is a recorded video. You'll be able to find it on HRAI's YouTube page after the fact. If you want to watch it again, share it with your company, or just you know, I don't know. What do I want to do with it? But without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Klayton, and I will be in chat looking for your questions. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Matt. I'm just sharing my screen here. Hopefully you can see my presentation there.
We are good to go. I can see it. Yep.
All right, perfect. Well, good afternoon, I guess now. Thanks for the invitation again to take part in this webinar. And for those that I haven't had the pleasure to meet, I'm Klayton Gonçalves. I'm a senior economist with BuildForce, and today I'm really excited to share some of the results from our latest report, Building a Greener Future, which aims to estimate the construction labor demands that are required to transition residential buildings across Canada away from fossil fuels and towards greener energy sources, primarily looking at converting buildings to cold climate air source heat pumps. Our study here looks at three main activities from a building's lens to reduce greenhouse gases. So we were looking at converting buildings away from fossil fuel powered heating systems, both space heating as well as water heating. We also looked at building new homes over the next decade with electric powered heating systems, as well as reducing the energy loss of homes in order not to put too much impact on the electrical grid. But just before I get into all the details of our study, I wanted to introduce BuildForce Canada to those who are not familiar. So BuildForce Canada was originally created over 20 years ago, actually, as the Construction Sector Council, and we're a publicly funded organization with a mandate to provide timely and accurate information to assist the construction industry with its workforce planning. Being a publicly funded organization means that this report and other labor market information studies that we conduct are available on our website for free. So I would encourage everybody to take advantage of that. So BuildForce Canada, we generate annual forecasts of labor demands in the construction industry, taking a look at both residential and non-residential sectors. And we track 34 different trades and occupations, which we deem are the key on-site trades, which make up about 75% of the total construction labor force. And we look at things such as macroeconomic indicators, demographic data, construction investment, as well as we develop an inventory of major projects to come up with a really clear idea of what demands and supply of construction labor are going to look like over the next decade. And what's unique about our forecasting is that we don't just run mathematical models in a silo. We actually count on industry partners across the country through what we call our LMI committees. So we actually consult with folks who are close to the industry to ensure that our forecasts are resonating with the industry. So getting on to the greener building or building a greener future report here. So the demands that are presented in our building a greener future report is a scenario based on the federal government's 2030 emissions reduction plan and also the long-term targets of achieving net zero by 2050. So in this feasibility study, we unpack all the labor that would be required to achieve these ambitious targets over the next decade and now to 2050. Although our study only goes out to 2032 so that we could compare that to our base case scenario. Our study starts by looking at the federal government's 2030 emissions reduction plan, which aims to reduce emissions by 40% by 2030 from 2005 levels. As buildings produce a significant amount of GHG emissions, it is important to address this source to meet these goals. We work backwards from the target. So our system estimates the number of heating equipment that would be required to be installed over the next 10 years. And here we're looking at both retrofits of existing buildings. So we're looking at upgrading inefficient electric baseboard heaters. We're looking at converting fossil fuel space heaters to heat pumps, and we're looking to convert um, fossil fuel powered water heaters to electric water heaters. But we're also looking at building greener homes. So we're looking at the demands that would be required to start to build homes equipped with heat pumps, as well as homes equipped with electric water heaters over the next decade. Although there is a ramp up period that is assumed in this. Our system then translates the equipment installations into investments. And finally, from those investments that are required, we translate that into trade demand, assessing the employment required by the 34 trades and occupations that are tracked by BuildForce. And finally, this transition will put additional draws on the electrical grid. So to not overwhelm the system, we are assuming that programs will be put in place to incentivize homeowners to improve the energy efficiency of their homes by reducing heat loss through projects such as replacing old windows and doors, re-insulating their interior, exterior walls, attics, all the way. So it can be anywhere from those smaller projects all the way to deep energy retrofits. And one thing that I want to make sure that I capture right here from the get-go is that while we initially set out to capture the impacts on the commercial, institutional, industrial buildings, there was a lack of data as this is so new. So we were not able to estimate those impacts. So what I'm presenting here today is specifically for the residential sector. So any type of trade demands for the HVAC industry, you can anticipate that it's going to be larger than what I'm presenting here once we take into consideration the commercial institutional front as well. So to understand the conversion of homes across Canada, we started with the Natural Resources Canada information on the number of homes in existence by their heating equipment source. And here we're looking at space heaters. So for Canada in 2020, which is the latest data that was available to us, there were approximately 15.9 million homes equipped with space heaters, of which about 40% of these were heated by electric sources. But this is primarily electric baseboard heaters. Only a very small percent of those were already installed with heat pumps. However, 45% of space heating systems were powered by natural gas across the country. And this is the primary heating source Canada-wide, which accounts for close to 7.2 million homes. Of course, differences do emerge between provinces. So we do see from this data set that Quebec, New Brunswick, Newfoundland are already primarily heavily powered by electricity, while provinces like Ontario and the prairies, Alberta, Saskatchewan, rely significantly more on natural gas, both for space heating and for water heating. Now, the chart that you're seeing there at the bottom shows the number of homes by electric energy sources, with heat pumps represented by the darker green there, and the electric baseboard heaters represented by the lighter green. So this essentially does give us a conversion rate. So we can see that there has been a conversion happening already over the past 20 years, but this conversion has been really slow. We've gone from about 31% of homes heated with electricity to about 40% by 2020 in this 20-year period here. So at this rate, converting all homes across Canada would take us well beyond 2050. The 2050 targets set by the government. So in our modeling, we are anticipating an increase in the rate of conversions to meet those targets. The picture for water heating equipment is relatively similar, where natural gas made up close to half of all water heaters installed that were in existence in 2020, while electric systems made up close to the other half. Our models here do assume that all fossil fuel powered water heater systems will be replaced by 2050, although our projections here go out to 2032 in order for us to be able to, again, compare with our base case scenario, which at the time went out to 2032. So based on the knowledge of how many homes were heated by which type of energy source, we're able to estimate here the number of cold climate air source heat pumps that would need to be installed to replace some of the less efficient electric baseboard heaters, given here by the darkest orange, and fossil fuel powered units, given by the medium orange bars here. The light orange bars represent heat pumps being installed in new homes that are going to be built over the next decade. So keeping in mind here that we're working backwards from the federal government's 2030 emissions reduction plan, these are the number of heat pumps that would be required to be installed by 2032 to put us in line to achieve those 40% reduction in GHG emissions. And then taking a closer look here at this chart, we are assuming a ramp up in heat pump installations from around 200,000 units all the way up to 700,000 units by 2030. So this ramp up is assumed to come through the homeowners choosing to replace some of the less efficient baseboard heaters. Of course, a switch away from fossil fuel powered space heating units and that comprises the largest contributions here is the conversion. But then we are also assuming new homes will start to be built with heat pumps over the coming decade. Now on the new homes front, based on consultations that we had with key stakeholders that are closely involved in new home construction, we are assuming that there will be a ramp up period with very few homes are currently being built with heat pumps, but this is anticipated to change with anticipated changes that are coming to the building code that could raise these numbers by the late 2020s and then beyond there. Across the entire period here, we're looking at about 148,000 units, heat pumps being installed to replace electric baseboard heaters, 3.3 million converting from fossil fuels, and then 1.1 million being installed in new homes. So altogether, Canada-wide, we're looking at the requirement to install more than 4.5 million heat pumps by 2032 for space heating. And again, I want to emphasize that this is Canada-wide. Of course, there will be lesser requirements in provinces such as Quebec, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, and to a certain degree, also British Columbia. But Ontario and the prairies, especially Saskatchewan and Alberta, which are primarily powered by natural gas, the installation requirements would be quite more significant. On this slide here, we're showing now the required installation of electric water heaters to replace fossil fuel powered units, which is given by the darker yellow bars here, and also building new homes powered by electric water heaters, given by the lighter yellow. So similar to the space heating trends, the retrofits of existing homes account for the bulk of the installations, especially in the near term. But a ramp up in new homes using electric water heaters is assumed by the late 2020s. Across the entire 2024 to 2032 period, we're looking at just under 4.3 million electric water heaters required to be installed. So this would be about 3.2 million to replace fossil fuel units and then 1.1 million in new homes being built over the coming decade. And I should mention here that this is probably not a surprise to anybody that's attending here. The work involved in retrofits is quite more involved than the work required in new home construction. So in terms of additional labor demands, the retrofits definitely dominate the landscape, whereas in new home construction, it's just using a different technology, but the work requirement is relatively more straightforward. And then finally, the last piece of the analysis was to ensure that this transition doesn't add an insurmountable draw on the electric grid that the nation's grid cannot handle. So based on consultations with industry stakeholders, we are assuming that a small percentage of existing homes will be incentivized to conduct energy efficiency retrofits, which range all the way from smaller the replacement of older windows and doors, which can range in the range of $15,000 to $50,000, all the way to full deep energy retrofits that would involve replacing windows and doors, interior, exterior, attic re-insulation, basement insulation, and so on. That could cost well beyond $200,000. So these types of projects are also different from fuel switching projects, which we discussed previously, which is just the replacement of the heating systems. These projects will involve a wide variety of trades and occupations, and sometimes they will draw on trades in the HVAC industry, but not in every project. So over the next decade, we're assuming here that 818,000 projects of this nature will take place, which is highly dependent here on government incentives. So there's also a lead up period here that we're assuming, as we learned from our consultations with the industry, that there is not a lot of homeowners looking to do deep energy retrofits without incentive programs in place. So incentive programs would be required to ensure that these projects go ahead. So to meet these greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets set by the federal government, we are looking at needing to recruit an additional 56,900 workers across Canada's residential construction sector. And I want to emphasize here that these are direct employment requirements for the 34 trades and occupations that are tracked by BuildForce Canada. So the overall impact of this transition would also create indirect and induced demands for other workers in the construction industry, like inspectors, oil burner technicians, sales staff, admin staff, and so on. But it would also generate employment opportunities in other sectors as this transition is anticipated to require some $80 billion worth of investment that will generate significant economic growth across the entire economy. So over the scenario period here out to 2032, we're looking at needing those 56,900 workers. The number here that's important to the HVAC industry is the 16,300 that you see there related to fuel switching. And this is the additional number of workers required to install all the additional heat pumps and electric water heaters. Energy efficiency retrofits will require an additional 40,600 residential workers to improve the efficiency of existing housing units. But while this number is significantly higher than fuel switching, it does require a wide variety of trades. Whereas When we're looking at fuel switching, we're primarily concentrated in five key trades here, including reading, heating, refrigeration, and air conditioning mechanics, electricians, plumbers, gas fitters, and sheet metal workers. Whereas for energy efficiency retrofits, the work is more spread out, and it tends to look more like a normal renovation project, which will require additional insulators, installers, particularly of windows and doors, painters, drywallers, contractors, and trade helpers as well. The employment requirements by province will depend, again, on the size of the existing housing stock, as well as the current mix of energy sources used for space and water heating. The largest demands seen here are in Ontario, which both has a significant housing stock and is primarily heated by natural gas. About two-thirds of homes in Ontario are heated by natural gas currently. Alberta and the Prairies provinces also see significant increases in the demand for workers, despite a relatively smaller housing stock. And this is because there is quite a significant share of homes that are heated by natural gas in these provinces. Like in Alberta, about 85% of homes are currently heated by natural gas. The demands in British Columbia are also relatively high, as the province has over 2 million homes, with about half of them being powered by fossil fuels currently. Quebec does have a very large housing stock, but it sees moderate rises in the demands for workers, because about 70% of the province's current housing stock is already being heated by electricity. And this is the similar case for provinces in the Atlantic region, with PEI being one of the exceptions. Now, this transition away from fossil fuels could generate significant demands for heating, refrigeration, and air conditioning mechanics, as this is the primary trade that is involved in the installation of heat pumps and the electric water heaters. So Canada-wide, the demands for this trade is estimated to nearly quadruple from the base year here. And it's well beyond the previous projection by BuildForce, given by the gray bars there, without the green buildings activities. So this increase Canada-wide is quite significant. Quadrupling any workforce is going to be very challenging. And this increase is much more extreme in the prairies provinces. So in Saskatchewan, for example, we do see a 1,000% increase in the demands for heating, refrigeration, and air conditioning mechanics over the coming decade. Given the hydronic nature of these systems, demands for plumbers is also expected to rise above our base case scenario here, and it is anticipated to increase 21% by 2032. Taking a look at the other key trades here, electricians are likely also expected to see quite significant increase in demands as homes, especially older ones, in many cases, will require upgrading their electric panels prior to installing heat pumps that are powered by electricity. So over the next 10 years here, we do see in the green building scenario, demands for this trade rising by 29% and being significantly higher than our base case scenario. With sheet metal workers, we also see additional demands increased above our base case scenario as the transitioning away from natural gas furnaces toward heat pumps often requires some configuration of duct systems at the unit. Our estimates here see demands rising by 25% by 2032. Now, looking at gas fitters, we do anticipate that additional demands will be placed on this trade in the near term, as transitioning away from natural gas furnaces will still require a licensed gas technician to uninstall existing gas lines. But as new homes begin ramping up installation of heat pumps, demand for this trade is projected to decline by 2032. However, it's crucial that the construction industry and the residential sector here does not lose these workers. At a time when work is projected to increase for the HVAC industry, it's crucial that the industry must look at alternatives and look really carefully at how to provide additional training for these workers to help with the transition away from fossil fuels and help in installing these additional heat pumps. At a time when labor market is quite tight, there's no way that the construction industry can afford to lose 2,000 workers across the country. Now, if Canada is to meet these greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets that are set by the federal government, the number of workers will need to increase significantly. But adding all these workers does not come without any risks or challenges. And the industry's ability to recruit these additional workers will depend on some key factors here, primarily, retrofitting in the non-residential sector, which will be putting pressure on workers with similar skills. Also, there is initiatives in place to address housing affordability that could see home building increasing quite significantly, which will put even more demands on the residential sector. And we also have a large inventory of major capital projects that we're tracking that could pull workers away from the residential sector. And then finally, we're still not over our demographic challenges as our population continues to age. The first key challenge here is the direct competition in demands with the commercial and institutional building sector, which will also be required to transition away from fossil fuels. Canada-wide, about 46% of these buildings are currently powered by natural gas, with some building types, such as primary and secondary schools, being about 74% powered by natural gas. So there is quite significant demands there. So the demands to transition these buildings away from fossil fuels are not captured in our Building a Greener Future report, but they will add additional demands for workers at the same time as the residential sector is also looking to convert existing homes and build new homes powered by heat pumps. The second risk is the competing demands from a housing affordability perspective. So the CMHC has come up with a housing supply gap of 3.5 million homes that need to be built by 2030 on top of the business as usual construction to return housing to affordable. So this would translate into building an additional 5.8 million homes across Canada by 2030. So BuildForce Canada, we've recently taken on the task of estimating the impact from these initiatives as well. And the results that show that the construction industry, if we are to build all these additional homes by 2030, and in fact, in our report, we do give a little bit more leeway. We look at going out to 2033. Even then, if we're looking at increasing the total construction, we're looking at a workforce impact of increasing the construction labor by 50%. On the residential sector alone, we're looking at nearly doubling the workforce, increasing by 83%, both on the new building as well as any other additional work that's involved. So these are quite significant demands that are being put in on the residential sector and on the construction industry as a whole. at the same time as we're looking to transition away from fossil fuels. The third risk here to meeting these demands is that there is a lot of major capital investment projects in the non-residential sector that are currently planned or underway. So I've been with BuildForce Canada for 10 years now, and this is the largest inventory of major capital projects that we've ever been tracking. So across the country, in our latest forecast, we were tracking more than 400 projects across Canada, valued at over $350 billion. So there's a lot of major projects. And these major projects, they have the capacity to pull workers to them, especially some projects with longevity, like nuclear refurbishment projects in Ontario. They do present the risk to bring the workers over there and keep them for a long period of time. And these are the same workers that would be required to convert homes away from fossil fuels during this 10-year period. And then finally, the challenge that we've been talking about for now more than a decade is the demographics. So we've continually seen Canada's population getting older as the baby boom generation are now well into their retirement age. And as of 2023, 19% of Canada's population was older than 65 years old. And this is anticipated to continue to increase by 2033. At the same time, the share of the population in the youth age 15 to 24 years old has been declining. So this transition means that the share of the population that's potentially available to enter the labor force is declining, while at the same time, the share of the population that's potentially exiting the labor force is increasing. And this is something that is not specific to the construction industry. This is in all industries. So at the same time, the construction industry is likely to see increased competition from other industries that would be tapping into those workers with similar skills. So coaching from other industries might become a little bit more challenging, and even maintaining the fair share of construction new entrants might become more challenging as other industries look to promote their industries for workers or young people that would be inclined to go into construction trades. So just to wrap it up here, putting it all together, this transition of buildings away from fossil fuels toward cold climate air source heat pumps will put significant pressure on the heating, refrigeration, and air conditioning mechanics trade. And we cannot afford to lose gas fitters, and some retraining may be required to ensure that those workers help in the transition instead of exiting the industry altogether. There's a lot of competing demands that may pose challenges to meeting these goals, and some of them are directly through energy efficiency retrofits, as well as retrofitting commercial and institutional buildings, which is not covered in our report, and the need to build 5.8 million new homes by 2033. And then finally, there's a lot of major capital projects in the public arena as well as in the private arena that could take workers away from these efforts and tie them up into those types of projects. Aging demographics only exacerbate the recruitment challenges here over the coming decade. So the construction industry needs to remain focused on attracting, training, and retaining qualified workers. And there's likely a need here to increase the share of workers that have been traditionally underrepresented, such as women, Indigenous people, and newcomers as well. So I'll just leave it there and open it up for Q&A now.
Thank you so much. And my apologies off the top. I completely mispronounced your last name, so that's my bad, especially since we
It's
had you
okay.
on before. So I'll get it right the next time for sure. So Leo has given us a question here, so I'll start with him, and I've got a couple more that were submitted. With all this demand on labor, is there any data showing what our trade schools are supplying to the labor force and what the government, provincial or federal, or both, plan to increase labor supply?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The policy implications of this are, still going through the systems, and this is one of the questions that keeps coming up over and over every time that I present this, is that, we need to get more young people into the industry, but it seems like there's still young people in line waiting to get into apprenticeships. So there seems to be definitely a bottleneck there in terms of training facilities for these people to get up to speed. But there is some good news as well. There are programs being developed. There are grants being provided. So one of them that we've seen was through the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum that were giving employers I believe it was $10,000 to recruit first year apprentices, especially those from equity deserving groups, such as women, newcomers to Canada, Indigenous people, and so on. And throughout 2023, we were tracking the labor force survey, and we saw very sharp increases in the number of women coming into the construction industry. So that was a really good plus to see. And we can't directly say that it was because of this program, but we can infer that, giving those incentives to employers definitely has helped to bring those first year apprentices. Now, more work needs to be done to ensure that those first year apprentices don't drop out of the industry come second year if there's no further grants to employers and they can't afford to keep those workers. But we've also heard some anecdotes of trade schools expanding. So there is work that is being done on the front of training to ensure that the labor is available. But we definitely need to take a look at this data to understand what could be required in terms of training over the coming decade.
Excellent. Got another question for you. So you paint the picture of a lot of pressures facing the HVAC industry as these activities come online. Where can the industry look to potentially source the workers required?
That's that's another great question, and these are tough challenges, right? But the good thing is that these are not only immediate challenges, they're also long term. So the planning here can both be a short term solution as well as a long term solution. In terms of short term solution, one thing that of course can happen here is on the immigration front. So BuildForce Canada just released a report on immigration into Canada and how the system currently favors people with higher education degrees and admitted very few people with skilled trades. This is something that we're hoping will change, and it sounds like there is a little bit of momentum to change that system to increase the intake of skilled trades people into Canada through the immigration system. So that would help us in the near term. Of course, we also need to ensure that these people have qualifications, and if we need to train them to meet the standards of Canada, if we can do that quickly. Now, long term, we definitely need to be looking at workers that have been traditionally underrepresented. So women, for example, currently account for about 14% of the construction labor force, looking at all trades and occupations. But most women that are in construction work in off-site occupations. So when we look at only those workers in on-site occupations, women make up about 5% only of the construction labor force. And if we look at the key five trades that are going to be demanded the most from this work, like refrigeration, air conditioning mechanics, plumbers, sheet metal workers, gas fitters, electricians. Women make up about 1.5% to 2% of these trades. So there is a lot of potential there to recruit more women into these occupations. The second group is the indigenous population. And the indigenous population actually is the fastest growing population in Canada, growing at around 3.5% per year. And this population, they have a affinity towards the construction industry. So in the construction industry, Indigenous people make up about 5% of total labor force. And when we look at all other industries, they make up about 4%. So it seems that it is already an industry that this population would like to get into. So if there are efforts and ways to engage this population more, there are opportunities there. However, in some of the trades that are going to be required here, it does seem that they are underrepresented. So in refrigeration and air conditioning mechanics, Indigenous people make up only about 3.5%, whereas gas fitters currently make up about 4.3%. So there are opportunities there. And then, of course, we can't ignore the low-hanging fruit. We've brought in a lot of newcomers into Canada. Can we make use of these workers in the construction industry as well? Can we onboard them to help with this transition? So we know that currently the immigrants that are in Canada, and I'm talking about all immigrants, about 19% of them work in the construction industry. But when we look at all industries, they make up about 26% of the total labor force Canada-wide. And we know also that in the key trades that are going to be required here, they are underrepresented. So, plumbers, about 13% are immigrants, refrigeration and AC mechanics, about 15%, electricians, about 13%, sheet metal workers, less than 10%, and gas fitters, we do have about 21% that are immigrants. So those are kind of the key demographics that could present some long-term solutions here. And of course, we cannot afford to ignore the young people growing up right now through the school system and ensure that they understand that the construction industry is a viable career that can provide them with a very rewarding career over their entire working life.
Amazing. Very comprehensive. Thank you so much. Touching on that then, what measures can be taken to address any of the skill gaps from the folks we have here who are available?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so some of the measures that can be implemented, of course, will come through the political arena, right? So one of the measures that I've already touched on is providing grants for apprenticeship, and that does seem to be bearing fruit. Just providing those incentives to the construction industry is pretty key, and making sure that those incentives are being put at the hand of the employers to ensure that apprentices have a placement to do their learning. So the construction industry is quite fragmented into small employers and micro employers. Even about 67% of the industry is made up of firms that employ less than 5 people. So for them to take on an apprentice, it is quite a significant risk. So if there are incentives out there in terms of grants that can help them reduce that risk, I think that is a worthwhile thing to pursue. And the data definitely seems to be supporting that in terms of new apprenticeship registrations have gone up quite significantly over the past year. We saw about a 30% increase in apprenticeship registrations between 2021 and 2022. So those additional measures are definitely important, I think, to ensure that we have the young people coming into the industry. And then on the other hand, we need to ensure that the immigration system uh, allows for us to bring workers with skilled trades experience, as well as tap into those immigrants that are already here that could be potentially a good fit for the construction industry.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it to a question from the audience. Is there any restriction coming on for in the installation of NG appliances in the future to achieve these targets?
That is something that I'm not aware of,
Mhm.
but so I can't really comment on that one. I'm sure folks on this call have a lot more insight into those types of questions. But yeah, I'm
Sure.
looking at it from a more macro lens here. So yeah, I can't quite comment on that one.
Absolutely. You mentioned those five trades that are going to see those high demands in labor, but are there any other trades or occupations that are going to feel that pinch in terms of recruitment for these initiatives?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what? Yeah, for sure. So those five key trades, those are the trades that will be see significant impact in terms of the fuel switching. So in terms of installing heat pumps, those are the key ones that we
Mhm.
see. But then the other part of our study was taking a look at reducing heat loss from homes, so making homes more efficient. And on that front, we do see quite significant demands for insulators. We do see very high demands for trade helpers and laborers as well. And we do see demands for windows and door installers. Granted that we are assuming here that uh, incentive programs will be put in place to ensure that that work happens. But if that work does go ahead, those
Mhm.
are some of the other trades and occupations that we do see strong demands. And then, of course, there's also the offsite occupations, right? I think I mentioned it in my presentation that this also could put strong demands on trades such as or on occupations such as inspectors to ensure that you're meeting your targets in terms of your air tightness and so on, um, and as well as oil burner technicians seem to be one of the occupations that are also came about when we were discussing this with key stakeholders. And as the economy grows, of course, all of the construction firms will need additional admin staff, engineers, and designers, and so on.
Thank you. And thank you to the folks who sent us those questions. I think we've covered a good run of topics here, and I really appreciate you joining us for a second time, Klayton.
Thank you.
Thank you
Nice
very
to be
much.
here again.
Like I said, if you want to watch this again or share it, you can find it on HRAI's YouTube page. In the meantime, giving you back 10 minutes in your lunch, and please join us for more webinars. You can find them on the HRAI webpage, and you can put one on yourself. You can contact me through there as well, and we can you can be up on the screen like Klayton here. So thank you so much, and have a great day, everyone.